Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone, where we discuss the realities of launching, scaling, and investing in a business. I'm super excited you're here today because I'm here with Mike Macadaan, the founder of This Is Ground and the co-founder of Science. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Mike, we've got to start out with you telling us the story of This Is Ground and how now, only a few years in, you've hit 1 million core tacos sold.
Yeah, it's ridiculously fantastic. And not that we don't sit there and laugh at the core taco. It's an extremely useful and handy utility, but it's a taco made from leather. So it's one of those things that was never expected to spark an entire business, but it's true. We've crossed the 1 million sold mark, and it's, both that includes both direct to consumer sales over the internet, from both our website and Etsy, and then also something that a lot of people might not know about, but we do a lot of massive bulk orders. So we've partnered with companies like Taco Bell, which we winked at for so long, and we finally got their attention. And they launched a whole series of core tacos at South by Southwest last year. And then we work with companies like Squarespace, where, and I think the latest is maybe Dropbox as well, where when you get a job, you get a core taco in part of your new hire kit, which is so cool. Facebook, basketball teams like the Warriors and Lakers, and yeah, I mean we've sold 1 million core tacos, and we're really excited about it.
What was the feeling like when you found that out?
Well, we projected it, and we kind of knew that it was coming, so it wasn't a huge shock. But when we actually sat down to also just evaluate all the stats around what went into 1 million tacos, that is when it became just such a fun story that we had to share. So, it's kind of like we actually calculated how many feet of cord that we wrangled, and it's about 3.5 million feet of cord. So that's both USB earbuds, micro USB cords. It took about 2,500 leather hides to make 1 million core tacos. Where our core tacos are on every continent except maybe Antarctica, but who knows? And we're in over 100 countries, and it took over 20,000 manufacturing hours to make those. The core taco actually has generated over $3 million in revenue for us, we have over 100 custom designs, and they're really more collaborations, because when we work with a partner like Taco Bell, it's a really fun creative process because we've learned to do so much with leather. In the early days, it was kind of like, what color do you want? And now it's kind of like, do you want something cut out of it? Do you want something burned into it? How many different colors can we do so much. We print on them now, and the only thing that we haven't done yet is no core tacos have made it to outer space that we're aware of, and we really like to make that happen. So if Richard Branson or Elon Musk or any of those guys are listening, maybe we can make that happen.
Sounds like a plan. One of the coolest things, Mike, about core taco, about This Is Ground, is that it was entirely not your plan. Tell us about the early days
of This Is Ground.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. It wasn't the plan. I was asked by a friend to develop something for an editorial piece. She was doing makeovers for desktops of editors here in Los Angeles, and she needed something to organize cables. And I had been dabbling with making my own leather accessories just to learn a new craft and to save some money. So it was one of those things where I procrastinated for quite a bit. Like I had 2 weeks to come up with something, and at the very end of that, the day before it was due, I had tacos with this investor, and the next morning, in that kind of state when you're waking up, like the two ideas came together, because a taco is amazing geometry, amazing from a simplicity and architecture standpoint, that it's so simple, yet it can sort of take care of organizing and handling so many ingredients. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, it's the perfect application for a set of earbuds. And so I woke up, I quickly prototyped it out of tinfoil and Scotch tape. And when I saw that it worked, it just like the term cord taco came up, and I Googled it. When I saw that no one had made the cord taco, I was in total shock and just kind of locked it up. And so when we launched it, it was one of probably 90 products in this editorial piece. And I remember the editor from Refinery 29 contacting us saying, "Hey, people want to buy this thing. You need to put it on Etsy or something." I was like, yeah, I just kind of put it on Etsy, and and they started to sell really well. Like people really, and kind of globally. Like I was like, oh, everyone's into tacos on the entire planet. So, but the real catalyst, I think, and the turning point was Uncrate, because the morning that Uncrate posted the cord taco, my Etsy app just went crazy, and we sold in that week about $20,000 worth of cord tacos. And I was making these literally in my dining room by hand, cutting myself and just in total denial, because I was also, I was at the very beginning of science. Well, not the very beginning, but we were probably a year in, so it was pretty intense. I had an intense day job, and I would come home nights and weekends, and I was just making cord tacos. So that's when, like, when Uncrate posted about it, that's when we really kind of took the whole thing seriously. And it was really a home business and slash hobby for several months. And when it got to the point where there was 3 or 4 people working in my loft, my sons not knowing where to sit down when they came home from school because it was just bags and bags full of products ready to be shipped. And then we got the Apple order. I was kind of like, okay, we need to move out of my loft. And so I that's when I kind of went to my partners in science, and I was like, we need to shut this business down, or we need to sort of absorb it into the portfolio. And when we kind of examined the economics around it, it was a really attractive business. It didn't totally fit into, I think, the strategy at the time. But the strategy at the time in science was really more about learning and experimenting with a whole bunch of different types of businesses just to sort of gain the intelligence. So it was definitely attractive from that standpoint. Yeah, it was one of those businesses that I didn't sit down and plan out. It just happened, and I'm really glad that it did.
I think it's so interesting how, like you were just saying, you started this in your house and eventually you end up at Science, which was the plan. While there, you worked with companies like Home Hero. I love Mike and Kyle, Dollar Shave Club. Tell us about what it felt like to have your own company in the startup studio that you created.
Well, it was cool. I mean, with all of those businesses sort of operating out of Science at the time, I had this amazing built-in research facility because I was basically gifting all of my prototypes to all of these businesses, and they would give me super honest feedback. I mean, if you can think about an environment where you can sort of get the best of breed advice when it comes to about every discipline, when it comes to launching a business, I mean, it really was an amazing environment for that. So I was spoiled on one hand. On the other, it was a little uncomfortable because, and I think that any entrepreneur that can relate to this, but when you really start to fall in love with a business that you're building, and when it really starts to take, and you really start to sort of feel the emotion and the delight from people that come face to face with your products, it's something that it's like falling in love. You can't ignore it. It just is going to happen. And so the uncomfort was that I also had a day job at Science. So juggling those two became difficult.
As you navigate now working at This Is Ground and you think of your day to day, what's the best part of your schedule?
I think my team meetings, I mean, as boring as that might sound, my team, I have 8 people on my team. And they could not be any more excited about this business. I mean, they're literally, over this Labor Day weekend, we're texting the whole time just about stuff they're finding, and they're just so into the business. And I think that when you get a group of people that really love what you're doing, so much greatness can come out of that. It's not sort of resting on the shoulders of 1 or 2 minds. It's just a team of great people. And so getting together with the team where we're kind of sharing our successes and sharing the learnings and sharing our failures amounts to some pretty amazing creativity. And the team is so, open. They've embraced the fact that it's completely ambiguous. We tend to kind of like experiment and make things up as we go along. Not intentionally, but because that's usually what's going to yield a better result than saying, okay, in a month we're going to do this. And. So there's just a certain amount of our schedule that's just open to sort of what are we going to try today. And the team has really embraced that, as uncomfortable as it is for some people that are more kind of planners. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I think in the early days, it's like some people were like, what? We're going to do what? But what about this? And but what about that? So a common phrase is that like devil's advocates are not invited to anything that we do, because it's really easy, obviously, to like pick out the things that might go wrong. But it's so amazing when those things go wrong and you gain the knowledge. We literally had, geez, should I talk about this? We had 2 fires, believe it or not.
I was going to bring this up, the Kickstarter fire.
There was that fire, and that was amazing. We were trying to get into electronics, and we were trying to do a charging iPad case, and we had all of these batteries going. And this is when like the big lesson there was like we're really good at leather, but when it comes to electronics, it's just a totally different game.
And keep a fire extinguisher in the office.
Yes, exactly. The other day we had a heat wave in Los Angeles, and downtown Los Angeles, it had to be 100, if not very close to 100 degrees. We just received a shipment of leather, and I got to tell you, like, we thought this stuff was possessed, because lo and behold, it self-combusted and it ignited and it caught fire. And so it was sort of like this perfect or not so perfect storm of all of these kind of elements that were aligned. I mean, it was the heat wave, the air conditioning went out in this building that we were in, and then back in the day when they made patent leather, they used a stuff called linseed oil, and they would use a lot of it. Painters were also familiar with this. I think that it maybe is a paint thinner or a chemical. When you use a lot of it, it can just ignite. It can just catch fire. And it's not like like if you have a pair of patent leather shoes, it's not like it's going to catch fire. It's when you have a lot of it stacked up, like hides and hides and hides, and then there's any kind of moisture and heat, and like it literally just caught fire. So, that's not a lesson that we set out to learn, but we now know. So back to your question, long answer. I think just my team interaction is just amazing. Shocking my designers is another fun thing, because one of the things that people joke about a lot in our studio is that, like, just when I say that's all the products we're going to do for the rest of the year, there's some other new product that I want to do, and I love shocking the designers, because it means that, like, we're really kind of pushing. We're trying to push out things that have never been done before, and I think it's both sort of like exhilarating and exhausting for them. So.
That is crazy. I would never describe a fire as a perfect storm.
Yeah, it was a perfect disaster. It was nuts.
One of the things that I can really get from you, Mike, from before we started recording and right now, is that This Is Ground is not about creating a product that you're selling online and making revenue from. It's really about impacting everyone who's involved, like whether it's shocking your designers, putting out a fire, or helping me just organize my life. Can you tell us about the deeper meaning of everything for you?
Yeah, I think the deeper meaning is that there's a lot of things in life that make us all uncomfortable. And they're the things that I really get excited about. And I don't, for me personally, there are things like the things that fascinate me that make people uncomfortable. In this country, men are very uncomfortable about carrying anything that looks remotely like a purse. As functional and masculine as it may be, if you dare use any word that rhymes with purse around it, they're going to be sensitive to that. I think The other thing that makes people feel uncomfortable sometimes is spending a little bit more money on something that's going to last forever. The idea that something's going to last forever. Um, the idea that every year, New Year's Eve, I want to be more organized. It's always like at the top of my resolution list. Yet I've never really stopped to evaluate why I want to be more organized. There's some people kind of blame it on OCD. Some people blame it on, maybe they'll be more successful and da 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 da. Well, we've like studied what it means to be more organized, and it's really exciting when an organized life is definitely a happy and a creative life. It really is, and we kind of feel that like organization should be something that is beautiful as well. You should feel really happy and excited to put your tools away, and to take them out. Every time you do that, whatever it is that you're using as a utility, you shouldn't be embarrassed about. It shouldn't be falling apart. You shouldn't like have to hold on to that old ratty bag because it fits just this, kind of one thing you have perfectly. So there's a lot of kind of deep meaning around that stuff, and things that make people feel uncomfortable. I've had a lot of crazy big jobs in my life, and leaving those big jobs to kind of tackle all of this stuff on an 8-person startup and to leave science and all that was really, really uncomfortable. And I still experience uncomfort around it today. But it doesn't last because I'm so excited about what we're doing and what we feel like the responsibility is of these things that we're putting out into the world. And the excitement from my team and the excitement from my 2 little boys that have witnessed the creation of this business that, some aspects of it started in their bedroom and in their kitchen and dining room. They've had season front row tickets now to taking something that they thought was completely ridiculous to being a business that sold 1 million of those things. So that there's a ton of deep meaning around that. And yeah, I think that when all of this stuff that I'm describing ends up being deep, like a deeper level, and stuff that deals with emotion and real feelings and love and care, and the outcome of that is the byproduct are these amazing products and a lot of stories and a lot of that's just the sort of really great outcome of the rest of why we're doing this. But you're right, our brand stands for a lot more than just leather wallets.
And I think even in the products, you have the mod, you have the cord taco, you have a wallet, you have so many things that I can use and that will become a part of my life. And we were just discussing before that something about the leather getting beat up and being with me every day, it means something.
Yeah, they're kind of these accidental sort of tattoos, marks, patina. They carry story, and if you go to areas of the world that have a lot of history, you'll see markings and etchings and on walls, and they should be preserved. There was a reason why these things happened, and whether it be through communication or accidental, they are symbols of journeys and things that are super cool. And listen, we get people that buy our stuff and they get a little scratch on it and they freak out a little bit. And we quickly tell them how to resolve that. But we also encourage them to let them naturally distress, because that's the fun part of leather, is that some of our leathers we were talking about earlier, we have this leather from Italy that's tanned next to the Arno by monks in Florence, Italy. And this leather is so amazing because it starts off being this sort of natural, sort of without color look to it. And when it tans, it literally just becomes, it changes. The whole thing, the whole vibe of the piece changes. So I just showed you my mod desktop.
Can you tell us about the new products?
Yes. So last year when we started to study who was coming in and buying our stuff, we were surprised and excited about a few kind of archetypes that we didn't really expect. One was food enthusiasts and foodies and chefs, and another one was interior designers. And the interior designers, we were we were excited about all of them, obviously, but the interior designers was interesting because it forced us to think about our products, and that most of our products are designed for mobility, and they're things that you carry around, and they complement adventures and day-to-day life. We'd never really thought about a static product that just sat there on a desktop. And so we took the same concept of the mod and we applied it to what we're currently calling the mod desktop. And it's kind of like a bento box in a way, but a little bit more flexible, and that it's a series of tiles. This is one of the tiles we're going to launch with, and this is the utility tile. So each tile serves a different purpose, and the purpose of this tile is to give you a spot for those cords that you're always looking for at your desk, or a pen, or these types of things. We have magnets in here so that the paper clips always have a home. And the idea here is that if you buy, and we have a mouse pad that has like a ruler debossed in it, which is super cool. A lot of our stuff we send out to our kind of partners or press so that we can get feedback. And so the outcome of this is a lot of feedback, a lot of testing. And these tiles just kind of click in next to each other so that you have some level of organization that looks really cool on your desk. That was the other thing is we met with the editor of Apartment Therapy, and he's a really fantastic and creative guy, this guy Maxwell, and he told us this story about how at the beginning of their business, he went down to the shoe repair shop and bought about 30 leather hides just so that he could put them on the desktops in his office, because he wanted to sort of warm up. You know, the desktop is filled with these sort of hard plastic, metal. It needed to be softened up, basically, with something organic and warm, and he loved the contrast there. So he was one of the sort of partners or collaborators that we talked to in the very early days on this mod desktop, and he inspired a lot of great thinking. We actually sent sets to Apartment Therapy, and they tested it out for about a month, and then we're going to be doing more with them on this line, but we're really excited about it.
Mike, as you take a step back and look at how large and exciting everything is now at This Is Ground, it lends to a great insight that my friend Jordan shared, that success for a creative person breeds self-doubt like no other. Has that happened to you? Are you always thinking of the next thing?
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I think that especially when I was working on purely digital, products, when I kind of started on the internet at the beginning, and I was working on projects that were really large scale. But the problem that I had with digital, and I still work on digital stuff, but the issue with digital stuff is that it's a really uncomfortable environment for people still. Well, now it's getting better because people are more mobile. But in the early days, when you were confined at a computer and you were at the mercy of being able to figure out several new interfaces on all these websites, there's a lot of uncomfort that comes with that. And so I think that in that world, you're going on sort of no history and the feedback from maybe 8 people in a usability study, and then you launch to millions of people. There's a lot of self-doubt in that world. I think the difference with physical products is that you get to actually watch people. Well, first of all, you have history. People know how to use zippers. They know how to use snaps. Yeah, they understand the size of a credit card and sort of what. So you're leveraging a lot of history that we didn't have in digital, and you also just get to sit there and watch people interact with it, and sometimes put it in their pocket. And so the sort of reaction from that was really sort of informative and rewarding, and alleviated a lot of that doubt. Now my self-doubt is more so comes from just sort of the creativity part. I feel like we have a pretty good handle, and we're not complacent about anything. We're actually never satisfied, and we're constantly trying to do new things. But now it's about, we're so excited about the things that we create. We want to make sure that the message and the word is being amplified loud enough, because that's the worst part about being an entrepreneur and having the budget of a small business, is that like you don't have the Nike budget, you don't have Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant to help you get the word out. So there's been times when companies of that size have, let's just say, been inspired by things that we've done and have launched their own versions, and then that can be a little soul crushing.
All right, Mike, last question, and this one can be personal, professional, athletic achievement from when you were 7. What is one question that you've always wanted to be asked, but nobody's ever asked you?
Wow, that's a big question. There's a lot. So I immediately go to my childhood, because my childhood was crazy, but it's probably too crazy for this show. So
nothing's too crazy. Now I'm intrigued.
Well, I think that maybe the question would be, how is your childhood, what are the highlights from everything from childhood to now led you to this adventure brand? That's probably what it would be.
So if you can give it to us before you have to go, what would the highlights be?
Yeah, the highlights are that my life, even though I grew up pretty much in the San Francisco Bay Area, was a constant adventure. I was constantly on the move. I was constantly forced to figure out how to pack up small amounts of personal life items and then kind of move on to the next place. And that was both from growing up with a mom that was a total hippie in the Bay Area, and then into my sort of, 20s, where it was more exploratory. I was on a blimp tour where I traveled around the country.
This is ground.
Yeah, that's where This Is Ground came from. I would communicate with the airship by saying 560 Alpha Bravo, this is ground. And so for probably way too long, I toured around with this blimp. It was so much fun. But it forced me to think about, again, sort of applying that idea of the uncomfort, but sort of like cool part of life where you can kind of pack up and go to the next spot. And, we had kind of 2-week periods of time. I did a NASCAR tour, a baseball tour, a golf tour. So that was very adventurous. And then all kind of leading back to finishing school and then going back to the Bay Area, where this thing called the internet was starting. And I just so happened to be attracted to projects that were either brand new or that were kind of turnaround projects, which then had me traveling and on the road. And, I was traveling all over California, down to LA, to the East Coast. And so I think my kind of whole life has been sort of the research study for someone that needs order and stability and organization to all of the stuff, all the objects that are in my life. And that's why I'm so excited about This Is Ground, because all of a sudden, after all of that, I get to go, okay, here you go. Here's a set of problems. So I think that creativity in more of a commercial application needs to have the foundation of real everyday problems. It's not just a matter of sitting down and satisfying sort of my own itch around something, but it's really, they're universal problems that we deal with. And that's really meaningful for us.
My God, thank God you ended on that. That was powerful. Mike, I can't...
As powerful as a cortaco. That's powerful.
I can't thank you enough for being with me today. How can everyone stay up to date with you, learn more about This Is Ground, and hopefully get involved?
We're probably the loudest on Instagram, so you can follow us at This Is Ground. And our website is This Is Ground, and we have a Twitter account at This Is Ground. We do our best to communicate out everything that we're doing. I, these days, spend most of my time just telling stories through our This Is Ground handles, although My personal stuff, which unfortunately gets a little neglected, is just at Macadaan, kind of everywhere. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
thank you so much. This was fun.